Hello everyone, this is Jimmy and welcome to episode 37 of FTB Interactions. Yesterday we set up our fusion reactor, which is kicking along producing oxygen plasma. However, it's going to shut off pretty soon when we run out of carbon. Right now it consumes a carbon ingot every 2 seconds or so, which is much more carbon than we're producing. So let's look at some of our options to make more carbon. Option 1 is just to scale up this entire system. However, this produces a lot more than just carbon, and we throw a lot of the byproducts away. It's not perhaps a very difficult thing to scale up, but I don't think that's a great solution. So actually, wait, why is the methane low? If we need more methane, maybe it's not awful to scale up. I don't know. We'll keep that in the back of our mind. However, what I'm leaning towards is to produce carbon from wood. So carbon dust can be centrifuged from charcoal or coal, but charcoal can be made, you can pulverize a piece of charcoal. Pulverize a piece of charcoal for charcoal dust, and you can make charcoal from the pyrolyzed oven from wood. So a convenient side effect of this is that we can do the recipe that produces wood tar as a byproduct, and then further process the wood tar down into toluene, because toluene is useful for both TNT and for simple power catalysts, which is a component of unstable mana, I believe. Yeah. So we're going to need a lot of toluene, and right now our toluene system is probably a little lacking. While why are you off? Oh, you're off because it's full. I guess our diesel generators are even running less. Oh wait, that's not even our toluene system though. This is toluene. Our distillation tower that's processing naphtha produces a tiny bit of toluene as a byproduct, but it's like 1,000-ish pieces a day. Super slow. And we already have this tree farm that produces wood at, 100 times the rate that we consume it. So turning more wood into charcoal is a basically zero cost endeavor. The oven produces charcoal, which I'm storing in a cache because who knows, maybe we'll find a use for a tremendous amount of charcoal down the line. I'll pull it into our pulverizer with a robotic arm. So import mode. Pulls it in, it pulverizes extremely quickly into charcoal dust. We'll have you put that into a centrifuge, which centrifuges extremely quickly into carbon dust, which we'll store in a barrel, I guess. 4,000 pieces of it ought to be enough. It's the last of our barrels. Aha! This system here is a great example of 2 birds, 1 stone. We get our carbon and our toluene, and we only had to build 1 system for it. Suppose we even get charcoal eventually, so it's like 3 birds with 1 stone. Am I efficient or what? Alright, so with that taken care of, I think we're ready to start actually making power from our plasma here. Off the top of my head, I seem to recall that 1 fusion reactor producing oxygen plasma powers around 24 plasma turbines, although that was with OmniFactory configurations, and I know that plasma turbine configurations are slightly different in this pack. I guess let's start with less, and then we'll just see approximately how many plasma turbines 1 thing of oxygen can power. You can kind of calculate it because you know the energy density of oxygen. However, there's a bonus EU output that plasma turbines get that all large turbines get, and I don't know if that actually counts against your fuel energy density or not, or if that's actually pure bonus. So let's build a couple plasma turbines and then just measure the rate of plasma consumption. The large plasma turbine apparently uses a UV machine hull. That's as high tier as these get. So the casing itself is osmium, that's easy. However, the hull requires Naquata alloy. So we're going to have to make some of this stuff. Let's see, Naquata alloy ingots. And that's osmiridium, Naquata, and argon in a LUV hot blast furnace. So let's set up a blast furnace for that. I can't just add it to this chain here because these blast furnaces are on EV, right? Yeah, these are on EV, so I can overclock them to IV, but I'm going to need 8 energy input hatches to get them to LUV. That's probably not happening. So I'll just run an LUV blast furnace. Guess I could put it just right here. Can I fit it under here? No, it's not going to fit under our blast furnace or under our assembly line. So this is our LUV line, so I guess I'll put an LUV blast furnace here. I changed my mind and decided to build it on the other side of our assembly line because there's more space to expand here. The first blast furnace in any line costs 16 coils. Each subsequent one only costs 10, so it's somewhat beneficial to only use or to leave yourself room to put more blast furnaces side by side. Anyways, once this fills up with both materials, it should start cooking. And it's not even all that slow, actually. It's pretty fast to make these hot Nequata alloy ingots. All right, well, once the first one is done, I can set the threshold and have this machine auto turn off. Right now it's running just because I haven't put the controller on quite yet. Our wire mill's a busy machine. I'm about to put another interface on the bottom side here. And with this, we no longer have any more sides of this chest that I can put interfaces on to hold recipes. So that recipe goes in there. If we need more, I'll probably just make a new bank of wire mills, honestly. At this point, we're also kind of out of channels here. That interface is a 30-second channel on this conduit, on this line here. So if I need more, I have to either split this in two, so I can... it's probably not that difficult to split in two. I can just run another P2P up from there or something. Or I can just not add any more to this line and put any more wire mill jobs somewhere else. Let's see if we can make plasma turbines now. Let's start with 2 because the question word conveniently gave me 2 rotor holders. So we'll see how much, basically from the plasma consumption of 2 turbines, we'll extrapolate out and see exactly how many turbines we think we can support off of the one fusion reactor. One of the components of the turbine multi-block itself, just the simple casings, doesn't look that bad, right? It's tungsten steel plates and steel turbine casings. We have steel, but apparently steel turbine casings are made of magnesium. There is no iron or really, like, this is magnesium and aluminum. How does that become steel? I don't know. Well, apparently we have to make some magnesium in order to make turbines. So hopefully this isn't that bad. Okay, it's just a magnesium aluminum alloy. Very interesting. I wonder why it's used to make steel. I've solved the mystery of why this is a steel turbine casing. It's magnesium around a steel frame, specifically a blue steel frame. Anyways, apparently there's 2 types of blue steel as well in GregTech. There's blue steel that has a chemical formula and blue steel that doesn't have a chemical formula. This frame has to be made from the blue steel that doesn't have a chemical formula. The blue steel that does have a chemical formula makes different things. Specifically, this blue steel doesn't even make plates or bars or any of that stuff. Weird stuff. Anyways, unfortunately, that's going to require another blast furnace. This looks like the type of material I only need a small amount of, so I'll actually just scatter it between various blast furnaces that aren't otherwise doing anything else, and we'll have them all contribute a little bit to our blue steel production. There's that blast furnace, there's this blast furnace. Basically anything that can make it, I'll have it make a little bit. And most of those blast furnaces even auto output into my ME system. Some of these don't. Apparently I have a bunch of stainless steel waiting for me. Well, now my metal bender is out of pattern slots, and I am, as we just saw, we're out of channels here. So actually what I am going to split off like the second half of this line maybe I'll split, I don't know, I have to split off probably at least 5+ channels, and I can use that to put a couple more, another interface on this, and inevitably we'll probably need another interface on our foils, yada yada yada. To segment this network here a little bit, I'm adding another P2P tunnel. It's connected to the P2P subnet, so I'm just running another conduit right underneath the energy energy cable, and connecting to that. And then what I'll do is at some point here, where's a good spot for me to break? I guess here, I can get rid of this piece of dense conduit. I can find my wrench. And now these machines, these however many channels here, it's not going to be 18. Yeah, these 3 are now running a different route to our controller, which frees up 3 channels here. This is a good demonstration of the flexibility of this type of ME system design, where you use P2P tunnels a lot instead of directly transferring channels, right? If this was all on the main network, in order for me to run just a handful of new channels out to here, I would have to run a whole new cable all the way from the controller to here. Whereas by using P2P, I don't have to do that. I just have to run a little bit of new cable. Turbine generators, unlike the multi-block diesel generator, also require a turbine rotor. The turbine rotor has a durability value which goes down at an incredibly low rate, basically to the point where all of these have infinite durability. However, the important value is that rotor efficiency. Ooh, thaumium's 100%. All right, well, I guess we'll do thaumium. I was going to go on a rant about how I have to scroll through all of these to find one that has 100% efficiency and is easily makeable. But, thaumium seems like a good choice. I'll look through these anyways in case there's anything better, but, sure, TerraSteel has more durability, but we're honestly never going through the durability of a thaumium rotor. I seem to recall we go through durability at 1 an hour, approximately. Time to build the plasma turbines. These multi-blocks, I don't actually know if they can share sides with each other because of the rotor taking up a large amount of space on the back. I guess we never know if we don't try, right? So it takes 1 fluid input and 1 fluid output. The input is for the plasma, and then it turns the plasma into the non-plasma version and outputs that. So let's see. Input hatch, output hatch. And then you need a rotor holder, and I believe the amount of energy you get is also proportional to the tier of the rotor holder. So a max tier rotor holder is ideal. I got 2 of them from a quest, and they can be crafted. Oh, they use HSS. So apparently there is a use for the red HSS, and I'm glad I did choose to make it. So anyways, you put your rotor in the holder, and the rest of the blocks are just casings with a empty center, a hollow center. The tier of the energy output hatch is also up to you. It'll determine the voltage of that is outputted, but not the total power. So I'm going to use the LUV output hatch because I think this will produce enough power to it'll produce at least 1 amp of LUV. I'm hoping. By the looks of things, you are allowed to stack them, and while the rotors overlap, I believe it'll function just fine. So let me grab 16, whoops, that's carbon. Let me grab 16 buckets of plasma, too hot to handle. Plasma typically is pretty hot, huh? And then we'll put it here, let's see, we'll just run 1 of them for now. When you first power it up, it has to spin up the rotor up to 7,500 RPM, and until the rotor gets to 7,500 RPM, its energy output will be, until the rotor spins up, its energy output will be very poor. So I'm going to see about how long that the oxygen we gave it lasts, and how much energy it outputs once it spins up. Another kind of interesting thing, while the rotor is running, it doesn't appear to be spinning, but you can't open the UI. So the one on the bottom, not running, I can open the UI. The one on top, running, clicking it hurts me because, well, you're touching a spinning rotor. Standing in front of it, I think. Also, no, apparently that doesn't hurt you. Never mind. You're allowed to stand in front of it. You're just not allowed to click on it. Apparently, a time in a bottle also does not make it spin up any faster. I just saw that though, it just consumed its second, basically consumes fuel at one bucket at a time. So it's second bucket of oxygen. But at this rate, we already, for each RPM, we produce 2 EU a tick. I don't know if the relationship is linear or not, but I guess if it is, we cap out at 15,000. That's a lot lower than I had hoped. But no, the relationship doesn't. It was 2 to 1. Now it's already better than 2 to 1. I'll just wait for it to max out. Almost fully spun up, and at 7,500 RPM, we produce almost 49,000 EU a tick. Is that an amp and a half of LUV? What is LUV? 36,768? Let's do some math. So this is just under an amp and a half of LUV. 49,152 would be an amp and a half. But yeah, this is a lot of energy. In fact, one of these produces as much as, how much are these? These are like 8,100 each, right? One plasma turbine produces as much energy as 5? No, 6. As 6 of my Naquata reactors. Plasma is very good energy. Now, the next thing I'm curious about is how quickly it drains the fuel. I believe it drains fuel whether or not it's actually outputting energy. So just because the energy output is full doesn't mean that fuel drainage stops. That also is different from both the single block generators and the diesel generators. It's still consuming fuel at the normal rate to keep the turbine, the blade speed spun up, the rotor speed. From this number, we can calculate the theoretical fuel consumption rate. If we assume that the energy density of oxygen plasma is what's stated in JEI, so 131,072, and that the generator is producing 48,640 EU a tick, and we've observed that the generator consumes fuel in multiples of 972 millibuckets, I can calculate that every 131 seconds, I expect it to consume another 972 millibuckets. However, I've been watching this a while, and it consumes fuel much slower than that. And I believe this is where this config value comes into play. There is a plasma turbine bonus output config value. Sets the bonus EU output of plasma turbines. It's set to 29,081. And I think this 29,081 is actually free. This does not count against the energy density of the fuel. So if my theory is correct, then when calculating the actual fuel consumption rate, instead of using 48,640, we should subtract that 29,000 whatever number from it, and that gives us 19,559. Using that as our actual EU per tick, as far as how much of the energy of the fuel we are depleting, I come out to 325 seconds per 972 millibuckets of fuel. And that's, like 6.5 minutes? That seems reasonably close to how often this plasma turbine is depleting fuel. I'm going to spend another couple of minutes watching this, and maybe I'll even, it just drained there. I'm going to start a stopwatch and see about how long it takes until it drains again. It's occurred to me that I might have signed myself up for 6.5 minutes of staring at this number waiting for it to change. We are, at this point, coming up on the 1 minute mark, so if it doesn't drain more fuel at the 131 second mark, I'll just assume that it's going to make it all the way to 6 minutes. Coming up on 131 seconds. And I started the timer a couple seconds late, so. But the timer just passed 131 seconds and we haven't drained fuel yet. So I guess I'm going to keep an eye on this and see when it happens. I might end up staring at it for 6 minutes. Wait, it just drained more fuel. And it did it at the 3-minute 25-second mark. That is, neither of my numbers make sense for this. I watched it for another cycle and it took just about the same amount of time. So, as a scientist, I'm not one to refute observational evidence. The calculations then based on that timing seem to suggest that the effective energy drain rate that it depletes fuel at is right around 32,000 EU a tick, which is actually exactly 1 amp of LUV. So I'm somewhat curious, what happens if I make it with a IV energy hatch? Does it output less energy and drain fuel slower? I legitimately have no clue. The thing is, this amount of energy is more than 4 amps of IV, right? And the IV energy hatch only outputs 4 amps. So I assume what happens is that the IV energy hatch literally cannot output energy fast enough. But when it's spun up, will it still produce the same 48,000? We'll find out. It looks like even with a IV energy output hatch, you get the same energy output from the turbine. So based on that, there's no reason not to use at least a LUV energy hatch. I do wonder, does it retain its RPM when I do that? It does. That's nifty. All right. Well, if I'm to believe my observational data, the number of plasma turbines that can be supported by one new fusion reactor is 15 and change, 15 and a half-ish. However, because you can't run half a plasma turbine, I'm just going to round that down to 15. So I need to build 13 more large plasma turbines. We'll have a blue power tower this time, I guess. I started this episode with 5,000 tungsten steel ingots. I now have less than 1,000. The rest of them have gone into this tower of terror. We're mostly crafted now. There's a few rotor holders left. Those are the slowest to craft because they use so much superconductor. Anyways, I'm going to set it up such that we throw out the oxygen that gets produced by these turbines. It's really not useful. I mean, it's just a tiny little bit of oxygen. And then wire the oxygen plasma input directly from the reactor to this turbine stack. We're all hooked up and every turbine is green. Now they just turned on, so it's going to take them some time before they're outputting a meaningful amount of energy. But let's also connect their power outputs down to something meaningful. So here is my LUV line, right? And these are outputting LUV energy. So let's just connect all that together, I guess. Made a handful more vanadium gallium cables. I'm actually thinking I might just swap all my, like everything else out at this point. I'll just use superconductor cables to connect stuff around. It's, in theory, you can use your cables as fuses to protect your machines. But I think we're late enough that at this point I'm not going to accidentally, connect ZPM power up to my LUV power line or anything. Although, I don't know. Now that I've said that out loud, I've probably also jinxed myself to definitely do so. This amount of power, once everything is spun up, I expect will last us through to the end of the pack. We have 15 generating 1.5 amps of LUV each. So what is that total? It's over 1 amp of UV power. I don't know. Maybe we'll need more. Maybe not. I don't expect we'll need more. The late game of this pack doesn't seem to require a absolutely tremendous amount of power. We definitely do not need these transformers in step up mode anymore. In fact, we can turn them around and use them as step down transformers so that our 15 plasma turbines can power everything else in our base as well. Pretty sure that's the right way to put it? Yeah. So now let's make a few more transformers, but now the LUV power from those is being stepped down to IV, which is powering whatever IV stuff we have, and it's stepped down even further to EV if needed. We produce so much energy that I can time in a bottle the highest voltage machine we have, the LUV assembler, and I think we can even do it 4 times. Let's see if we can get the 5th one. We can even get 5 time in a bottle ticks, and it crafts at lightning speed. Oh, this is great. But anyways, we should actually put this power to use doing something meaningful. I mean, sure, overclocking a machine is meaningful, but we can do better than that. For now, let's set up some number of mass fabricators to produce as much neutral matter as possible. Specifically neutral matter, but I guess the other types of matter are useful too. We're going to need a lot of it for neutronium down the line, so may as well get started early. Because we have so much power, I think I'll just use, I don't know, maybe I'll do it at Ivy, I guess, and let's start with 10-ish mass fabricators. That should be a good start. The first mass fabricator I set up, I was supplying it rather with bauxite, but I found something better. Air. Turns out the air, which we can just collect with an atmosphere or air collector, has a lot of matter, neutral and positive matter in it. For every bucket of air, there's over 2 buckets of matter in it. Don't ask me how this works out, but I have a atmosphere collector that collects air at a ridiculous rate, and I just have to distribute that air between our mass fabricators. I figure if we're going to be using these shiny mass fabricators, let's also store the products in shiny tanks. So I made the very big black hole tanks. Will we fill these up? Not a chance. They hold lots of buckets. Not having commas makes it very hard to read that number. All right, so there's 3 zeros. There's 6 zeros. So 256 million millibuckets. Yeah, that's a lot of fluid. These take, I don't know, maybe about like 2 to 3 minutes per operation. And they basically each drains 1 amp of EV power. Or no, IV power. This is insane voltage. But even still, 10 of these drains the power produced by 2 turbines. The next natural step then is probably the Mark II fusion reactor, or fusion computer. This uses wetware supercomputers, which nothing here looks unreasonable. However, we need a ZPM assembly line, so I think we might have to upgrade our assembly line. Is our assembly line ZPM? Let me go double check that really quick. But the actual bottleneck is going to be... Oh, it is. Okay, never mind. The actual bottleneck is going to be that we need to make a little bit of europium. Europium is typically made in a fusion reactor with neodymium and hydrogen. My plan for this then is to make just a little bit of europium. In fact, just enough to solidify it into an ingot, pulverize that ingot into dust, and then we will mass fabricate the europium. However, after that, turning the actual dust into ingots is going to take a blast furnace, although it's pretty quick. So I guess we need a Mark I fusion reactor just to make a little bit of europium. Most of the components in the Mark I can be recycled when we upgrade it to Mark II. I could also just reuse this reactor. Yeah, I guess that's not a terrible idea. I can temporarily turn it off, so it's not producing helium and carbon. Okay, yeah, let's just reuse this reactor on second thought instead of building a whole new one. This fusion reactor is just about done emptying out its carbon and helium. I disconnected the fluid input or the fluid interface that was providing it from the ME network, and I added 2 more input hatches. So into one will go neodymium, and into the other will go hydrogen, and this should produce europium. So 1 more batch of that, and then it stopped briefly and started up producing something else. It did drain the input buffer. But now it's producing europium. So this drum should be empty. Snag it. I believe this will produce just a hair under 2 ingots of europium total. The first batch of resources that goes through the fusion, like in theory, this will produce exactly 2 europium ingots, right? Because it's 1-to-1 with neodymium, and I put in 2 ingots worth. But I believe, at least it used to be, that the first batch that goes through the fusion reactor for some reason gets lost. So we'll end up with 288 minus 16 millibuckets. Let's see if that's right. Nope, looks like we actually did get exactly 288, so there is no loss. Good to know. Alright, with europium in hand, let's once again switch our fusion reactor back to making oxygen plasma. So once this realizes it's connected to the ME system again, it should kick on. There we go. And we're off. Solidify it into ingots. It's 2 ingots. I wonder how you got in there. And then we can macerate one of them. If I can remember where I have a macerator. You're a macerator, right? Into dust. And then I just need to go make myself a replicator. A replicator takes the one piece of europium dust we made, makes more out of it. And as I mentioned, I just set up a blast furnace here, being supplied via an interface that turns europium dust back into ingots so that we have it for other reasons. Now, I would set up something similar for neutronium right now, because technically neutronium, right, is made in a Mark I fusion reactor, and we have the Quadria. However, the americium for it is a bit more difficult to make. This actually does need to be made, if we're not cheating, in a Tier 2 or Mark II fusion reactor with chrome and lutetium. Actually, do I have lutetium? I do not. Can it be... I guess we have to fusion for that too by the looks of things. Wow, the Mark II fusion computer is a lot of stuff. Almost 23,000 bytes. We're missing a couple things too at the bottom. Let's see what it is. Fine osmium wire, that's fine. Up to 8x cable, that's easy. NOR gates and HSSG frames aren't too bad, and I guess I have to process some rubies through a gem sifter. Okay, let's start with the rubies because that will just take the longest time. Uh-oh. I came up to my space station to, add rubies to my sifters, and I noticed that I had a lot of ores backed up. That's not supposed to happen. That means something has jammed. Question is, what is it? So this is jammed. That's full. These are all full. Those are full. What? Oh, this chest doesn't have enough slots. Huh, that's an interesting problem. Alright, I guess I have to replace this chest with something with more slots. That's an interesting way for things to get jammed. This here has to be a GregTech inventory because I put filters up against it. So I just went with the tungsten steel crate. It has 126 slots. This shouldn't get jammed by filling up now. So with that cleared up, I guess everything else will start processing through. Fortunately, that means I actually have a huge backlog of ores. You know what? I think I'm actually just going to turn off this. Turn off processing of the ores coming through our miner. I have how much iron? Like, do I really need more than 425,000 iron and 300,000 tin? No, probably not. Actually, instead of turning it off at this point, let's turn it off here. That way I don't have to go through all the stuff that I have backlogged. With that jam cleared up, let's put some ruby ore through our ore processing. And I think I already have ruby selected here. Yes, I do. So when this goes through our sifter, that'll produce those exquisite rubies. Meanwhile, I'll work on getting the other components we need for that fusion computer. With all the recipes encoded now, all I have to do is wait for our sifters to produce enough exquisite rubies. I think we need 16 total. Let me take a look at that number again. 16 total, of which we have 3. Well, 13 to go. Come on, sift away. Our storage system here is also on its last storage cell with only about half of the cell left. So let's give it another drive. Much better. Now it has twice as much storage. They're all 64Ks. With over 16 exquisite rubies in hand, I think we're ready to make the fusion reactor computer Mark II. In the end, it turns out to be just about 24,000 bytes. Oh boy, doing this by hand would really suck, huh? Alright, well, fire. This might take a fair bit of time. All said, the crafting is actually progressing far better than I expected. It's only a couple significant bottlenecks. This chemical reactor is one of them that makes high power IC wafers. These are a minute each, so nothing a time in a bottle can't fix. And the other bottleneck is probably going to be this assembler. Once again, nothing a time in a bottle can't fix. One more cutting step and then everything should get jammed in here to make our fusion controller, our fusion computer. And off it goes. I think the quest here once again does reward us with some components. If I can find where the fusion controller quest is. I always lose track of what tab the various quests are in. For example, the fusion quests are in the power generating tab. I mean, I guess that makes sense. They're a power generating mechanic to some degree. But yeah, if we make 8 fusion coils, it gives us 27, and we only have to make 47 fusion machine casings. And it gives us the other 32. Having queued everything up, our tungsten steel supply is just barely hanging in there. 174 left. In fact, I'm going to go and overclock that blast furnace 1 tier. Tungsten steel is apparently a very heavily used resource. That one's tungsten carbide, this one's tungsten steel. So thankfully we get 1 tier of overclocking very easily by just replacing that block. Ooh, the Mark II fusion computer was, I guess, this quest here. So we only have 1 more quest left in the main quest chain. The creative storage key. The jump from Mark II fusion computer to creative storage key, though, is it's a little much, I feel. We are nowhere remotely close to this. Ah ha 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 ha. Claiming quest rewards. Apparently claiming the Draconium completed a separate quest somewhere else. Wow, that completed a lot of things. More Draconium. Ooh, an advanced dislocator. I love the advanced dislocator. But actually, with this much Draconium, there is one thing I kind of want to do with it. I want to make the Celestial Manipulator. It'll be the first thing we have that can skip through nighttime. What's the point of a Celestial Manipulator this late in the game? Not much, really. It just lets us go to the next day. So if I want to go to the next day, I can hit the skip day button. Takes a little while. Takes more time than sleeping, but when it comes to astral sorcery, which is somewhat picky about the constellations, being able to skip days is nice. It's taken a remarkably long time to unlock this ability, though. We'll use this later when I finally want to go discover the Horologium constellation. But for now, why don't we wrap things up here? We'll come back tomorrow and put together our Mark II fusion computer. And no, you cannot hit this button and get tomorrow's video immediately. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.